So I keep mentioning tools that help you manage information and how important they are. There's one that keeps coming up more often than any other, and that is Microsoft Excel. Excel is probably the single most powerful tool around the world for business because it is widely available. It's either free or inexpensive, and you, of course, can download Microsoft Office for free through the Seneca license. I provided a link for you. But because it's so portable and universal and relatively easy to use, a lot of people use it. That's not to say there aren't other systems that HR departments would use. They would, but quite often you want to do custom work or work that you're comfortable with, and we take data from other systems, put it into Excel, into a familiar environment. So this is going to be the first of several sessions we're going to do with Excel. And as promised, that we are going to start from scratch. I will assume you don't know anything about it. So if you do know things about it, and as you watch this, just check them off your list to make sure that you can do it. So if it is new to you, take some time to practice each thing so that when we add more to it the week after, you're not struggling with the stuff we learned the week before. And of course, feel free to ask lots of questions. Now, Excel is a spreadsheet, and you'll find that it's not one big thing, like you need to know all of it. You need to become comfortable with the environment and then keep adding layer upon layer of understanding to it so that you could fit it to your need. Okay, so let's get started. Once you open Excel, you're going to see a blank workbook option. Now, in some cases, you will get a series of templates over on the right side as well, but we're going to start from scratch. So double click on blank workbook, and this is what you get. It's a series of boxes or cells in a spreadsheet. There's columns at the top, A, B, C, D, and there's 650 of those. And there's rows on the left side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know how many there are. Maybe there's tens of thousands of them. It doesn't matter. Generally, you'd put one employee on each line or each row. Now, keep in mind, this universe of Excel, this space, is huge. And there's a lot of things inside it, buttons at the top that you might not be familiar with, but that's okay because Excel is also designed for other people like mathematicians and scientists, not just for business. Okay, so let's get down to the basics. Where a column meets a row, that cell, that box has an address. It's C2. Okay, just remember that. Now we're going to type in a title at the top. Let's just call this Centra Inc. just to be simple. That's our company. I'm going to put a good descriptive title across the top, 2019 to 2021 pay projections. Okay, that's understandable, so that another person, when they read the report, they'll know what's included in it. Now, we're working on the first tab. If you see down at the bottom, there's sheet 1. We're going to add additional tabs to it later by clicking the plus sign. Okay, so right now, just one tab at a time. Now, I'm going to teach you the first simple plug and play function. A function in Excel is something that automates something that you want to get done. In this case, we want to date stamp this worksheet. So the function always starts with an equal sign. Okay, let's make that a little bit bigger. So that tells Excel it's waiting for some sort of a word or a calculation. In this case, it'll be a word. And the word is NOW. Okay, and then you start it off with the bracket. So all functions start with an equal sign. There's a word, the name of the function, and you open a bracket. Now, sometimes we put something inside the bracket, but in this case, we don't. Just close the bracket. Important that you close it, and that's a full function. Now, in this course, we're going to go through about 15 of them, more or less functions, a few calculations, a few techniques, and generally, after you finish doing what we do in class, you're good to go. You're ready to offer Excel to the business world, to your HR department. It's going to look great on your resume. Now, of course, throughout the years, you're going to discover additional functions, additional things that you can do with it as well. Okay, so have a look. I typed in equal NOW bracket bracket. I'm going to press enter, and it works. That's called plug and play. Now, I don't like that format, so I'm going to right-click right inside the cell. Not here, right inside, move, right-click the other mouse button, and don't worry about all these options. Just stick to what I'm telling you. I'm going to format cells. Now, in format cells, we've got several options, categories. And we're going to go through a few of these later. But right now we want date. So just you have to sit there and just think about it. What category am I looking at? Well, it's a date, so let's choose date. Now inside the date, you've got several types. And right now we want this one here. It's called medium date format. I like it. It's the most efficient way to type in hundreds and hundreds of dates if you had to. Okay, there we go. So take a look. It changes the format. Nice and simple. So you learn your first function. See how easy it can be? Now over here, let's just remember we're doing basic stuff. So let me type in some headings. Employee, and then see I'm doing it one per box. So employee name. We're going to do weekly hours. We're going to do hourly rate. We're going to do weekly pay. And let's do annual pay. Okay, so I'm just typing, nothing different, one per box. Now I'm going to put some names down. Normally you would do the person's last name, comma, space, first name, and probably have an employee ID number. But we're just going to do something simple here. Just type in some names. Oops, Sam, Buffy, and Sally. Okay. Now the number of hours that each person worked each week is 37.5, 37.5, 35, 40, 37.5. It varies, okay? Let's just say all of these employees are working in the factory. They're full-time. They all do exactly the same job. They do it just as well, and they all started on the same day. So when you look at numbers for the first time in front of you, you have to question why are there differences? What does that number mean? Well, 37.5 is a standard work week in North America. It's suggesting you work from 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock a day. That's 5 hours, or 8 hours, sorry. Times 5 days, that's 40 hours. But we don't pay you for lunch, so 30 minutes every day for lunch. That's 30 minutes times 5 days, 2.5 hours. So 40 minus 2.5 is 37.5. Now Sam has negotiated an extra half hour of lunch every day. The 1 hour lunch, maybe to go visit their child next door in a daycare or something. So we're paying Sam for 35 hours. Buffy doesn't do anything different, but we pay Buffy an extra 30 minutes every day so that when the shift ends, Buffy stays to talk to the next group coming in. That's it. Nothing different. She doesn't do any different job. We just pay Buffy 30 minutes more. Now the rate of pay for each person looks something like this. Okay, so let's do 25, 14, and 15. Now right off the bat, in class I would ask you a question. Do you see something strange? And you would say something like, yeah, why are the females getting paid less than the males? And I would say, well, we don't have any evidence as to who's who, what their gender is, legally defined. And you can't judge by a person's name or the way they look. So I don't see that at all, although it's worthy of investigating. But they're all females. Josephine, Patricia, Samantha, Buffy, and Sally. So we don't have a problem there. So now we're going to calculate weekly pay, okay? This is the first calculation we're doing. Two things you have to know how to do. One is, what is the idea behind the calculation, the logic? Second is, what's the mechanics? How do you do it in Excel? So the logic is this for Joe. You take 37.5 hours and you multiply it by $24 per hour. That gives you how much you get paid in a week. So on a calculator, you would do 37.5 times 24 and then equal sign. In Excel, you do it backwards, okay? Let me make this a little bit bigger. Equal sign. Now, you could do this, 37.5 times, so star is times, 24. Okay, just remember that. Star, X is not times, that is not times. In computer world, that is times, this is divide. All right, so times 24. And that will work. It's good logic. You could even do it backwards. 24 times 37.5. Your answer is 900. But remember that if you change the person's rate, let's say to 26, you now have to remember to go back in here. So either click, go up here, or double click and change this to 26. Now come on, you're human. You are going to forget to do that, right? So from now on, don't do what I just did. You can use that for a quick calculation on the side, okay? But you're going to do this. Look, this 37.5 sits inside the cell that has the address B5. $26 an hour is inside C5. Now, let's have a look. I'm just going to start with an equal sign. Click on B5. Do you see? Times C5. Now, the reason we do this is because B5 will always be B5. C5 will always be C5. But what's inside it might change, right? If next year we change the pay to 24, you see what happens? Now, I want to do the same thing that we did for Joe for Pat. And Pat will be B6 times C6. Sam will be B7 times C7. Except I'm not going to do it one at a time. For 5 people, no problem. But what if I gave you 500 or 5,000 people? So we want Excel to do the work for us, okay? Have a look. You see that 900? We like it. You move your mouse to the bottom right-hand corner. And you want to practice this lots, okay? Move it to the bottom right-hand corner, and you see that little black plus sign? Click the mouse, drag down, and let go. Okay, or I'm just going to undo. Or you can move your mouse to the bottom right-hand corner and double-click really fast. So now it does this calculation for everybody. See? Let's test B5, C5, B6, C6, B7, C7, and so on. See, you've learned a lot about Excel so far. I mean, I need you to practice that. I need you to become good at that, copying down, doing equals and all that. Now, the annual pay, the logic behind this is the weekly pay times the number of weeks in a year. Or you can do the hourly rate times the number of hours in a year. Now, I should tell you, there are 52 calendar weeks in a year. Now, you don't know how many hours are in a year, right? Remember, we don't work every single day. But if you are a typical employee in North America, you work 1,750 hours in a year. Okay, that's just a standard. But not everybody does. Obviously, Sam doesn't and Buffy doesn't. So I'm going to do the weeks, okay? Look. Let's make that bigger. Take the weekly pay, times it by 52. Done? Now, I know in the live session in class, we did something strange. We did, I think we did it. We calculated vacation pay separately. And that was just to show you how not to confuse things. So if I wanted to see how much of this annual pay is used for vacation, I just create a separate column here called vacation pay and multiply weekly pay by 2. Let's say if we're giving 2 weeks vacation. Don't worry about that too much. We're just doing basic right now, okay? Now we're going to stop here for the basic side, but I do want to show you some of the formatting because I know these numbers don't look right. It's irritating you. I get it. Now formatting is going to be on my test. In fact, this 23 September 20, the way we did the date will also be on the test. So I'm giving you free marks right here by telling you it will be on the test. So let's have a look at these. These are hours. I'm going to highlight them. See with the white plus sign? And up here at the top of the screen, right in the middle, you've got several buttons you want to practice. Dollar signs, percents, commas, increased decimal, and decreased decimal. So these are just hours. They're not dollars, they're not percent. So if it's just a number, you click the comma. Now see how I get 2 decimal places? I want to reduce that down to 1. Done? Hourly rate, this is dollars. So I'll click the dollars. And you decide, do you want to keep the zeros or do you want to get rid of them? So I reduce the decimals. Now weekly pay and annual pay, I'll highlight all of it together. Those are also dollars. And I think I'll make this 0 decimals as well. Actually, these, I think I'll make 1 decimal. Now, I don't want to confuse you, but let's say this was my test. You will know how many decimals I have. Okay, it's not up to you. You will know, but you will change it. And if you don't, like for example, I made this 2 decimals. If you don't, you lose marks. So, very basic. Not a problem. I think we could redo this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to delete all of this, and we're going to start with the brand new worksheet. And I'm going to change the name of the company to Centra Inc. Now I'm going to start you off on this story about this company. It's a real company. This stuff happened back in 2002 and 2003. So it is back then, but we're going to assume it's now. It just happened recently, okay? And it's a small company. So it's very important before you do anything for a company that you understand the context within which you're working, what the company is. It's a relatively small company owned by one person. It's in a small town, about 100 and some odd kilometers from here. And it's if you ever been to a small town, you understand the culture there, the lifestyle, the way people think is different than a big city. So this company is probably one of its kind left in Canada. They make custom, high-end, handcrafted, made in Canada cases. Cases like briefcases, little bit of luggage, not too much. Mostly cases for expensive equipment like cameras and science equipment. And they're made out of very expensive leather or metal, titanium, whatever the customer wants. So the company grew, the owner grew it, and other than actually there's not 5 employees, there's 58 employees doing this job, and the job is master craftsperson. These people, they produce with their hands high quality things. They're called craftspeople, master craftspeople. So there's 58 people. In addition to that, there is the president, CEO, who's the owner. There is an HR person with one part-time assistant. There's a manager or director of sales with 2 salespeople. And there is your boss, or these employees' boss, who would be the production manager. And there's 1 maintenance mechanic. So under 100 people, but still a company, right? So we're only going to do data for 5 people. I'm going to give you the problem. We're going to think about it, and we're going to move the data forward. Each class. We're just starting today. Next session, we're going to actually add a lot more to it. And it's not so much about the story I'm going to tell you about the company. That's just an added bonus. It's about individual things that we do in Excel. Okay? Now, I will give you a checklist of all the stuff we've done, but you need to practice. And the way you do that is after we do something each session, you ask yourself, can I redo this tomorrow completely? Let's say within 30 minutes. If the answer is yes, you're okay. If you say, nope, I need to work on this, I want you to work on it. And there are notes, there are little video tutorials that I've put on my Seneca. Find out which one you need to work on and put the time in, okay? So I'll get back to the story. About 60 employees in a small company in a very small town who are making handcrafted, made in Canada, high-quality leather cases, or some sort of cases. The owner himself has 2 children. The son is a lawyer, I believe, in New York City. He's not interested in the company. The daughter is an engineer in Montreal. She's not interested in the company. The owner himself has money. He's not interested in money. He's happy with what he does. He's a very much family-oriented person. He's deeply religious, good convictions, just a great guy. You ever met this guy? He'd think you're family, okay? But certain issues happen along the way, and we're going to get to those probably next session. But right now, let's start with basic, okay? So in 2019, this is the amount of money that each employee was getting paid: 55, 60,000, 42, 59. And although they all do exactly the same job, we can account for the differences in pay based on, let's say, performance, quite often seniority. So if Sam started a lot earlier than Buffy, of course, Sam would get paid more. And quite often it was just a matter of who asks for a pay raise, they might get it. If you're not forceful enough or you're too shy and you don't ask for a pay raise, you might not get one. So it's not really a fair system, but yeah, it was being done. Now, let me just give you perspective, okay? I'll put dollar signs here, 0 decimals, so it looks better. This is pretty good money for people who have gone through the process of becoming master craftspeople, because until recently, you didn't even need a high school education to get this. Now you do. But you had to work about 6 to 8 years as an apprentice, as an assistant. before you get master status. And they all have master status, and that's pretty good money. Okay. Now, because that system was going on for years and years and years, people got comfortable with the kind of money that they were getting paid. Now, let's move on to the next column, and I'm going to show you how much they produce. Okay, so these are units. So this is the number of units that each person has produced in the year. And of course, you can account for highs and lows because some people work differently than other people. Some people work harder, some people have a higher motivation, but it's within a range. And it was working all these years. That wasn't the problem. So they get paid so much per year to produce that many units. Now, normally we would have another column, gross units produced, then another column called rejects, and then a net. So if we took all the units produced and minused all the rejects from it, rejects are damaged items that we can't sell or shouldn't sell, the net would be the gross minus the rejects. But we won't do that. Just assume these are all net units, meaning that if a person had an entire case that was damaged, had to be thrown away, they would lose one. If it was 2 cases that were 50% damaged, that will be 1. If it was 10 cases, 10% damage, that will be 1. Okay? So I'm just going to change these numbers, make them look good. And they're just units, so we'll use a comma. And oh, by the way, look, if you ever get hashtags or number signs on your screen, all it means is that the column's not big enough to fit what's in it. So if you go between the C and the D, you see up here? See the double arrows? Just move the column over a bit, see? It got bigger because we added a decimal and 2 zeros. I don't want those 2 zeros. So change that over. And I'm going to bold this one as well. So any numbers that we're just typing in are bolded. Now, if I ask you to fire somebody based on this data, let's try this, okay, as a game. Just based on the name, you pick Buffy. Just based on the pay, you would pick Sam. Buffy simply because you don't like Buffy. Very discriminatory, irrational decision. Pay because Sam is the highest paid person. Now, based on units, you would fire Pat because Pat is the lowest producer. See, different ways of making decisions, very basic, happens all the time. But we're going to calculate 2019 PPU. Now, if you don't know what PPU is, that's okay. It's a ratio. It's a, what do you call it? Like a ratio. It's a pay per unit. The word per means to divide. So in your minds, you're trying to figure out, okay, this person does get paid more, but they produce more, they work harder. How much dollars per unit produced? So instead of doing it in your head, which you can't, we calculate PPU. So I'm going to show you a little trick of how to tell everybody what PPU is, okay? You right click on PPU and you go to insert comment. Now I'm going to delete my name and I'm actually going to write pay per unit and additional information like adjusted for rejects. So now what happened, and by the way, you can bold things in here, you can copy paste, you can change the color, you can even the color of the background as well, you can put pictures in here. Really, you can even record your voice and put it inside here. But what happens when you click out, there's a little red thing in the corner. So anybody who knows Excel, they can move their mouse over it and it will give them additional insider information as to what it is. So they're not bothering other people. In fact, before my meeting, I'm going to send this spreadsheet to everybody to look at, right? I would actually put a comment inside Buffy's name to justify and rationalize why I chose to fire her, or in this cell or this cell. All right. Now let's calculate PPU. I'll make this bigger. It's pay per unit. This one's easy. The word per is always divide. So let's take pay divided by units. That means how much money for one unit. It's $55,000 for 1,250 units. How much for one? And it's called a labor input cost, $44. So for every unit, excuse me, that Joe produced, it cost the company $44 in labor costs. That's called labor input costs. Now, of course, there are other costs. Listen, I didn't tell you this, but on average, these cases that we make go out of the factory from anywhere from $2,000 all the way up to about $8,000. Okay, very expensive. And we're only paying this guy $44? No, that's not the point. Think of it this way. We are paying this person $55,000. But there's other costs too. There's hydro, there's rent, there's insurance, there's a portion of taxes. The material that goes into each case is very expensive. You know, the Corinthian leather, the gold, the titanium, the marketing costs. So now let's copy this down. Who is the most cost-efficient producer then? Right? I mean, take a look. We went from firing Buffy to Sam to Pat. Now, who is the most cost productive? Is it the higher or the lower number that is important? It is the higher number. So we're going to fire Sam. And it probably will be Sam because Sam has got 2 yellow boxes, right? Think about it. Sam is down on 2 accounts. But that's not how you look at it. In fact, our best employee is Buffy. And you were about to fire Buffy. Either Buffy doesn't get paid that much, which is true, or she's the most efficient. But one thing you have to do is if you pick the highest or the lowest for any decision making, always go and look at the next highest or lowest and see the difference. Okay, so take a look. Joe is the next highest, and he's only off by 44 cents, which is 1%. So now it's insignificant difference between the two. You have to be careful. So what if Sam and Joe, I mean, they're all doing the same job, but what if Sam was fired, but Sam, otherwise known as Samantha, Sam's machine kept breaking down more often? Not Sam's fault. What if Sam was legitimately sick for medical reasons? Sam missed a few days. Therefore, that number is slightly higher. What if something like Sam was on maternity leave for a while and we didn't account for that? Right? Think about it. You can't discriminate on that basis. That number is off by 44 cents for maybe things out of that individual's control. So we'll target both of them to terminate, or whatever it is we're going to do with that number, and we'll investigate, okay? Now I'm going to add one more column here, and we're going to call it 2020 units, okay? So have a look. Again, numbers in bold because I just typed them in. Let me just fix them. 2020 hasn't happened yet. We are right now in August of 2019. I'm only putting 2020 units up right now because this is what's going to happen next year. And it hasn't even happened yet. Because next session, we're going to talk about the problem that has occurred in this company, the big yelling and screaming, the controversy, the owner's indifference, what happens in that community, and consultants from Toronto who walk in and what they manage to do. But for right now, I think this is enough for us. By the way, we're not going to fire anybody. I think that's good. We're going to add to this spreadsheet next time, and I'm going to put this spreadsheet on my Seneca for you to access. Okay?